Welcome back to Community IQ. I'm your host, Garrett Grinnell, and again, looking forward to a good conversation political series. Our very special guest today, our Lake County Sheriff, Peyton Grinnell, and our special host for the whole political series, Bruce Duncan. Sit back and enjoy. And remember to engage and to encourage, building up versus tearing down. Voices of our community, Community IQ.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Community IQ, part of our political series that Garrett and I have been putting on for several weeks. This is Bruce Duncan, and tonight I think we've got our first pistol-packing guest tonight. I'm not real sure. We're very honored tonight to have Sheriff Peyton Grinnell, another Lake County native who is a constitutional officer here in Lake County, the duly elected sheriff and the highest police officer in Lake County. And Sheriff, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Well, Peyton, we talked a little bit. You are a native of Lake County. Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, sure. I was actually born in Eustis at the old Waterman Hospital. Pretty much grew up in Leesburg. And go Jackets, by the way. Leesburg High, class of 86. And, I got to be honest, I didn't really like school that much. So I found a program at the high school called DECA where you could get out of school early and go to work. So, and you got money. That was a good thing. So my junior year and my senior year of Leesburg High, I worked at Publix. I would get out of school early. And, what a great thing. And so anyway, I was actually promoted to full-time stockman, right after graduation from high school. And what a great job. It really was. I still get a dividend check today. It's not much, but it makes me smile when I get it. But, I just didn't have, the responsibility at that age to manage that kind of money that Publix was paying us. I mean, they paid us good money, Bruce. And so I joined the Marine Corps. And that was in 1986. And, I tell people all the time my parents did a great job of raising me, but the Marine Corps solidified it. And I'm confident I would not be where I'm at today if it hadn't been for the Marine Corps.
Peyton, you bring up a good point. Your parents, one thing that we've seen throughout this series that we've done is that anyone that reaches the level that you are, the constitutional officer, elected official, has a strong family background. Talk a little bit about the influence your mom and dad had on you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my dad was, he was hard on me, but he loved me. And I will tell you that both my parents worked, so I had a younger brother, 8 years younger than I did. So a lot of my responsibility was making sure my younger brother was taken care of because my parents were working. But I will tell you that, we grew up, we didn't have a lot, but we had enough. Mm-hmm. And we appreciated what we had. And, my dad always demanded for me to be honest. And that stuck with me. It prepared me. His tough love is what I would call it. It prepared me for my time in the Marine Corps. I looked to my left and to my right at some of the other Marines, and I could tell how shell-shocked they were when the discipline was being handed out. But, I was used to that. And but I will tell you that it was my parents were very instrumental in me being the person I am today.
Peyton, something that I like to address here is, and I've said this dozens of times, my parents were not my friends. My parents were my parents. And what you said a minute ago is that your father was tough on you, but you knew that he loved you.
Yes.
So, he wasn't worried about you liking him as much as he was worried about you teaching you to be a man, which is something that unfortunately I think is lost in today's society. Give me a couple of examples of how he taught you what it means to be a man.
Well, I will tell you, I could name many, but he called me in a white lie one time, and Actually, he caught me in a white lie many times. But, he took me to the person that I was dishonest to, and had me walk in and explain why I did what I did and apologize for it. So I was accountable. He taught me accountability. But, I will tell you that just seeing how my dad put his children first, and he was busy. Both my parents worked full time in the citrus industry. That was big back in the 80s, and but he always put us first. So that taught me something.
Absolutely, and it's the old proverbial story of you got caught with a pack of gum in your pocket that you didn't pay for, and your mom or your dad marched you down to the store and said, "Hey, you need to tell this gentleman what you've done. You need to give it back to him, or if he won't accept that, you need to find out a way to pay him for it." And you used a very good word, accountability, that you were held accountable for your actions, and you learned a lesson through that probably has stuck with you. I'm clearly has stuck with you your entire life.
It has, absolutely.
And today it's unfortunately, but we see parents are always making excuses for their children and for their actions and their failure to do the right thing, as opposed to holding them accountable for their actions. And it truly is something in society that I think we've got a serious problem with.
Yeah, I will tell you, and I talked about both of my parents' work back then, and obviously that's true of many households today. And I get it, parents come home after working 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it may be, and they just, they're tired.
Right.
So they allow their son or daughter to go in their bedroom and close the door and do whatever the child may do, whether it's getting on Xbox or who knows what. But and I understand that it's tough, but we're parents, and you have to talk with your children and see what's going on in their lives, and talk about conflict and talk about accountability and things like that. So if the parents aren't doing that, then who is? That's the question.
Outstanding. And yes, both my parents worked growing up, but my parents understood that their priority number one job was raising their children. The going to work every day was just an opportunity to facilitate taking care of their kids, providing the things that we needed and wanted in some instances. But their number one job was to take care of us and to teach us what it is to be a good citizen. And so it's refreshing to always hear in this series that seems to be a common theme. Yeah, well, thank you. You said you had a younger brother. Did you guys have any fights or arguments when you were growing up?
Not really. We were in different, I don't know how you would say this, but different times in our life.
Right.
And, so his interest, I'd already outgrown them.
Right.
So we really didn't get into arguments over anything.
Right. I had 3 older brothers, and they beat the living tar out of me, Peyton. So there was no getting away from that. But that was all part of again. My dad used to tell me the only thing worse than being picked on is being ignored. So you learn that was their way of loving is through picking on you. But no, we are very close to this day. But we sure had some knockdown dragouts when we were boys growing up in that house. Yeah, and they, like you, my oldest brother's 13 years older than I, and the closest one is 6 years older than I. So I didn't stand much chance growing up in the battles. Yeah. What about your faith, Peyton? Did your parents instill a faith in you?
We attended church there in Leesburg called Main Street Baptist. I still remember the pastor's name, Dr. Wimberly. Mm-hmm. He had the most crooked fingers I've ever seen, but he would point at you, and that's how you would know. And, and my entire family was baptized in his church and accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior. And I'll always remember that. My mom and dad were there when that took place. And so it's no longer Main Street Baptist. That church has been bought out by First Baptist of Leesburg, Pastor Cliff Lee. Mm-hmm. But I'm very strong in my faith. I will tell you that Easter Sunday, sitting up in the balcony at Heritage Church there in Fruitland Park and listening to Pastor Sid Brock give the message. It's nice to hear good stuff. So often, especially now, all you hear are negative things, and it's nice to just be refreshed. And my faith is what keeps me going. It's especially this past year and a half or so, it's been tough for everybody. I understand that. But we lost 2 detention deputies. They passed away that were contracted COVID, working in the jail. And it's been tough on our agency and a lot of other employees that I know very well have had some difficulties. So, I turn to the good book, and it gets me through it.
Right. All the answers are there. Just got to go find them. Yep. Peyton, you are in the Marines. You're fresh out of high school. You go in 1986. You said, did you become or work in the military police there at all? Is that what got you into law enforcement?
Actually, no and yes. I didn't work in the military. I thought I was going to work in the military, but the Marine Corps played a trick on me and switched my occupational specialty without my approval. And, of course, they didn't need my approval to do that. But my first 2 years, I was in a security group that provided security for the Trident submarines when they would come in to refuel and defuel at the various dry docks on the coastal areas. And then my second 2 years, I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the Fleet Marine Force there. And I never will forget it. I had about 27 days left in my enlistment contract. And my high school sweetheart, my wife Jennifer, was up at George Washington University on a swimming scholarship. And we had an apartment up there, and I had a job lined up with Uniform Division of Secret Service. I was very excited. And I remember the company formation, and the captain said, "I've got good news and I got bad news. Raise your hand if you're due to get out of the Marine Corps." Of course, my hand, I shot up real quick, 27, 28 days. And he said, "Well, the good news is you're not getting out of the Marine Corps. And the bad news is you're not getting out of the Marine Corps. So it's up to you if it's good news or bad news. We're going to war. You've been involuntarily extended." So they sent me over for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So I actually did about an extra 5.5 months in the Marine Corps. And the Secret Service didn't hold that job for me, though.
No. Well, you still were in service to your country. And Desert Storm, Desert Shield, you said was quite a miserable existence over there, from what I understand. I mean, the heat was unbearable. Talk a little bit about your time over there.
Yeah, so actually got over there Christmas Eve. I got there Christmas Eve. I remember there was a gentleman dressed up as Santa Claus handing out ammunition as we got off the aircraft. He was laughing. I didn't think it was too funny. But, they actually took my unit, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, 2nd Marine Division, and attached us to the Army's 7th Corps to a tank brigade battalion. They had the M1 Abrams, and what an awesome piece of equipment that was. So I actually was assigned to an Army unit while I was in country over there. And just great guys. And I will tell you that, typically there's a rift between the Army and the Marine Corps, but when you're over there in a situation like that, everybody's your buddy. And, I was very proud to be a part of that unit. And, so we did a lot of things there because, as you can remember, the air campaign was, unreal. Weeks and weeks of airstrikes that we were doing over there. And then we got the word to, gear up for the ground invasion. And I will tell you, that's when it really hit you, okay, this is for real. We'd actually gotten used to hearing all of the bombs that were going off over there, and you'd be playing cards and not even look up. You just got used to that. But when they tell you to get in the back of the Amtrak and you put on the MOP Level 4 is what we called it, the chemical protective gear, and you've got tape around your wrist and tape around your ankles, and you've got monitors attached to let you know if you've been exposed to a nerve agent, and you're listening to the tanks that are hitting the mines as we're making the breach. I'll never forget that feeling of, here we go, and looking around at the Marines sitting to my left and my right, even though they had on gas masks, I could tell that, it was serious, but it all worked out. That was a great campaign that General Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell and that team that was there making those decisions. They did a great campaign.
Peyton, you go through something like that, and nothing that you face the rest of your life will ever be as difficult to endure as something like that. It almost makes the rest of your life a little bit easier to take, I would imagine.
I don't know. Campaigning for public office is pretty tough.
Yeah, but you're a natural at that. You're an easy guy to like. So I don't see that as being nearly as difficult as facing the Republican Guard in Iraq, led by a crazy man in Saddam Hussein.
Right.
So anyway, well, thanks for that, because I know. Talk a little bit about the heat, and how do you deal with the heat over there when you're in all that gear and all that combat gear? Yeah,
the heat was difficult, but the drastic change from daytime to nighttime, it was actually the worst part of it, because you would go from being extremely hot to you can't get warm. So that was difficult. And that when they tell you, or you hear them talking about shifting sands, that's true. We had goggles. You constantly had sand in your nose, sand in your ears, sand everywhere. There was nowhere that you didn't have sand on your body or in your body. And so that took a toll, having to deal with that. And then the oil well smoke, there was times that it could be 2:00 in the afternoon and you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you because of the amount of oil well smoke that was in the air. But I was over there with some professionals, and we had a job to do, and I believe we did it right.
Clearly, you did it right, no doubt about that. So, Peyton, what year do you get out of the Marines and come back home?
That would have been May of 1991 is when I was back here in country and processed out, and went ahead and moved in with my wife. Her mom came up to stay with her while I was stationed overseas in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And, I didn't have a job. The Secret Service job that I had lined up, they didn't hold that for me, and that application process was about 18 months, So I walked into a TGI Fridays on the corner of King Street and Beauregard in Alexandria, Virginia, and had a suit on, and the general manager's name was Saeed Barzani. I remember him like yesterday. And it was 10:30 in the morning, and he was getting the restaurant ready to open at 11. He said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I'm here to apply for a job." He said, "Well, you're hired." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I've never had anybody put on a suit and come in here and ask me for a job." And but anyway, I waited tables there for about 6 or 7 months, and he asked me would I be interested in becoming a bartender. Well, bartenders at TGI Fridays back then did pretty good. I don't know if you remember the movie with Tom Cruise, but I actually had a guy on my staff that trained him for that movie.
Cocktail.
Yeah, Cocktail was the name of it. And so I ended up working my way up to bartender, and that's when I decided I wanted to go to college, because I could not get a law enforcement job in the D.C. area unless you had a college degree. That was one of the things that you had to have. So I went to school at Northern Virginia Community College and got my associate's degree in criminal justice. And about that time was when my wife graduated from George Washington University, and I had applied to transfer to George Mason. Mm-hmm. But we decided that we really missed our roots, we missed our family, we missed Lake County. And so we moved back here to Lake County in 1993, and that's when I went to the Law Enforcement Academy.
Right. And where was the Law Enforcement Academy at that time, Pete?
Lake Technical College, Kurt Street.
That's right. That's right.
Back then it was called Votech.
That's right. Yep. So that was before the Kenneth Bragg complex was.
They were actually building that.
Right.
When I was there in the fall of '93. Matter of fact, I was the first class to actually graduate on that campus, but my schooling was not completed there.
Right. Right. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. So you're 23, 24 years old when you returned back home?
Let me see. I was hired at the sheriff's office in April of '94, and I was 26 then.
26.
So, yep.
Yeah. And was Sheriff Knupp at the time?
Sheriff George Knupp hired me. That's correct.
Yeah. And so you work under Sheriff Knupp for how long?
Golly, all the way up until I guess it would have been 2004.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sheriff Borders took over from there?
Yeah, well, we had an interim sheriff come in for
Right.
about 9 months, Fred Cobb,
Fred
if you
Cobb,
remember
right.
Fred, who ended up being the police chief here in Eustis, great man. And then Chris Daniels ran for
Right.
election, and just another great man, Eustis boy, by the way.
That's right.
And unfortunately, he was tragically killed in a fundraising event,
Yep.
and that's when Sheriff Borders was appointed by then Governor Jeb Bush.
Right. That is a night that I don't think any of us in Lake County will ever forget, was getting the news of what had happened with Chris. Just a horribly tragic event, and you always wonder, what the purpose behind that was. But it just was a terrible, terrible night. We were all devastated by the loss of Chris, and I think this whole county suffered for a long time. But I think that we ended up with some pretty good leadership between Major Borders and then Sheriff Borders. And now, of course, the leadership that you're providing there in the Sheriff's Department is just incredible and a blessing to the people of Lake County. But it will always be a difficult night to remember when we heard what happened with Chris. Now, you rose up through the ranks. Obviously, you get hired by Sheriff Knupp as a deputy sheriff, just regular deputy with you've got your law enforcement degree now from Votech. Tell us a little bit about how you progressed through the ranks there at Lake County Sheriff's Office.
Sure. I didn't turn down anything that was offered. When I became eligible for field training officer, I applied for it and was successful at that. And then I became the supervisor of the field training program. As soon as I was eligible to test for sergeant, I did that and achieved that rank. Then I realized that, I wanted to finish my college degree. So there was a great liberal Christian arts college in Lake Wales called Warner Southern then. And they ended up partnering with the sheriff's office. Sheriff Knupp allowed that to happen, and they would come up. They actually brought their staff up here to the training center and held NC classes there. So I was able to finish my bachelor's degree with Warner and just continued to keep my nose clean. And I really loved my job. So I think if you love what you're doing, you're good at it, and I did, and I just felt like, this county was so good to my parents and my grandparents, and I felt like I had purpose, however small it was. I was able to give back something to the community. I felt really good about that. So. And I just had a lot of great support. I had some great mentors. That there was the chief Dave Hall at the time. He was the chief deputy under George Knupp, and I never will forget when I went to for my interview when I applied at the sheriff's office, and he was sitting at the end of the table, and he always wore these glasses at the end of his nose, and he would look over the top of the glasses, and he could be very intimidating. And he just looked at me and he said, "Young man, is there something wrong with your foot?" And I said, "Sir?" He says, "I didn't stutter. Is there something wrong with your foot?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, judging by your driving record, there is." And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. But he hired me anyway. And I did have a few speeding tickets.
That's very, very Dave Hall right there. That's a great story. Great story. Yeah. Now, did you ever get yourself involved in the SWAT program? Because the sheriff's department had an incredible SWAT program.
I did not, and we did have it. We still do have a great SWAT program, and I just think that coming out of the Marine Corps and everything that I had been through, I wanted to just kind of step back from that a little bit. So what I did was work in different areas of the agency. I went into criminal investigations, went into the intelligence and homeland security. I actually became the training center director out at Lake Technical College, where I was running the advanced and specialized classes and the recruit program to hire new deputy sheriffs, and actually became one of the public information officers in community services. So I just took the time to really kind of learn all areas of the agency except for the undercover world. I never really did that. Those guys just amaze me with what they do. They work in a very dark and dangerous world in that drug unit, and they do a good job of keeping that poison out of our community. So that's one area that I just never really got involved in.
Right. Yeah. I think you and I first crossed paths when you were there at the training center, and I was involved in leadership Lake County. We used to have the law enforcement day out there at your facility, and you guys would put on a heck of a show. And of course, George was the sheriff at the time, and George had a lot of toys, didn't he?
He did, he had a. People would refer to him as the garage salesman. I mean, he really had a way of, I don't know, squeezing a nickel, if you will, but always had great stuff. And yeah.
And I tell you what he really had. I mean, he had an eye for the stuff and an ability to buy it really cheap, but he had an incredible department that refurbished that equipment. I mean, he would buy this stuff old and cheap, better than I, but I mean, my amazement with him was always how he could take a piece of junk and turn it into a piece of treasure through his department. And I think George did some of the work himself. He was quite a mechanic himself.
He was, and he did. He liked to tinker. So what you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah. George was an interesting character, man. We sheriff for a number of years here in Lake County. We've had our share of characters in the sheriff's office. But Peyton, characters can be good and bad, and I would not classify you as a character. I classify you as a serious law enforcement officer, and you're exactly what we need in this day and age. There's a time for characters and there's a time for seriousness, and I think you have fit the bill perfectly here for Lake County in your time. Now, what point do you decide that Major Borders is retiring and you decide that, what, I think I'm ready. I think I want to run for sheriff myself. What prompted that?
The sheriff telling me that he wasn't going to run again.
Right. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
I will tell you, I worked for about 10 years under Gary Borders as his number 2, and I learned so much underneath him, not just what to do, but also what not to do. I think that's just as important, so we would make those mistakes together. So to his credit, he prepared me the best he could to take that next step. It wasn't something that I knew was going to happen when it happened. He just brought me into the room and told me that he wasn't going to run again and would I run. And I said, yes, sir. This is what you've spent all your time doing, is making sure that there would be some succession planning in this agency. And ultimately, it's the citizens' decision, but he did his part. So that was when I made that decision.
Let me ask you, because I'm certain you weren't the only one that had that vision in your head, that may be where you were headed when you were doing all this wonderful work at the Sheriff's Department. Was there any resentment from any of your fellow officers when Sheriff Borders tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, I'd like you to be the next guy?
Human nature, I would tell you that there probably was somewhere. I don't think that all 700 and however many employees we had back then, 60 employees, were holding up signs saying, go Peyton Grinnell, right. But I think the consensus amongst the leadership team that we had in place, senior management, was for them to support me, which I'm very grateful for. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's the voters' decision, and I will tell you that it was probably one of the cleanest sheriff's campaigns in the history of Lake County. And that's the way it should be. These candidates should talk about what they're going to do and what they believe in, and let the other candidate do the same thing. And I just think we get into this pointing fingers at one another, and it just seemed to get uglier and uglier.
Very good point. Yes, and consensus, and I mean that is the road to success. Is that when we're all working together on the same page, and your department, I think, as well as any sheriff I've seen in my 58 years now here in Lake County, is running as cleanly and as efficiently as I've ever seen. Let me ask you, so the year you're elected is what?
Let's see, it would have been 2017.
2017. Okay, so you are now in your second term?
Just started my second term this past January.
And, of course, you ran virtually unopposed.
I did run unopposed,
Right.
and what a blessing that was. And I don't know if it was because of the COVID pandemic or what it was, but I will tell you that Bob McKee told me one time there's two ways to run a campaign: scared and unopposed.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate to run this one unopposed.
That's good advice from Bob. We had David Jordan on last week, and so we talked a lot about Bob McKee. He's had an influence on a lot of people in this county, and positively.
That's right.
Yeah. So, you say it was a blessing. I think, yes, it was a blessing, but I think blessings come to those who deserve them. And I think people see the job that you're doing, and no one, I'm sure everybody look at that and says that's a waste of time to try to run against this guy. And so that's a tribute to the job that you're doing. So don't sell yourself too short.
I appreciate that, Bruce.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a great team at the Sheriff's Office. We really do. I'm not that one guy that's making that decision. We round table, and we are very serious about making sure that we're providing efficient, effective law enforcement services to our citizens. But we do a lot of good things outside of traditional law enforcement, and unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't make the news. But we support our community. We do a lot of fundraising events. We want to make sure that our Pop Warner football programs stay up and running. We want to make sure that we're helping the Haven, who provides services to our domestic violence victims. We want to make sure that LifeStream behavioral services remain available to our citizens. So, we do a lot of things that, the average public just doesn't realize that we do.
Right. Right. You mentioned some very outstanding organizations. I'm blessed to be on the board for LifeStream, and our relationship with the Sheriff's Department there is outstanding. The Haven, I represented the Haven many years ago during my legal days, and what a fine organization they are. And without the love and support and cooperation with the Sheriff's Department, that would never work. So, I mean, you're exactly right. And a couple other things I'd like to point out. Your involvement with the Lake County Fair and 4-H and FFA, as far as those young children and people who are trying to learn a business, is instrumental to the success of those programs. And, of course, just a couple of weeks ago, you and I were at the Lake Sumter State College auction, and you were a huge supporter of that auction, not only with your presence, but with your financial support. And that's offering opportunities for kids to rise above. And you're right. You're doing a lot of things. Not only are you out there making sure that they're obeying the law, but you're giving them an opportunity to rise above it. And it's a great thing to see.
Yes, sir.
And working together with the community is essential. It really is. And I think hopefully everybody's grateful for all that you do. Peyton, you talk about things that you're proud of, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a Tim McGraw song that talks about when you feel a little bit of success, don't worry about feeling a little pride. Just make sure you reach around and grab the guy behind you and pick him up and bring him along with you. I'm going to talk about something that probably is the greatest thing of pride in your life next to your wife and your children, and that's your involvement in Lake County Dancing with the Stars.
Here we go.
I think you probably are one of the finest competitors in the history of that program. How many years that thing's been going on? 15 years now, probably?
Yeah, I will tell you. Every morning when I get up out of bed, I'm reminded of Dancing with the Stars because my knees have not been the same since.
Yeah, you and I share that same. I can remember when I got that phone call from Carmen Cullen, and Carmen is not one that you say no to easily.
That's correct.
And at the time that I did it, it was also run by Kathy Sleaford, who was a junior achievement. It was a joint program between Take Stock in Children Junior Achievement, and it was the first year they ever did it. And man, it was hard for me because that's way outside my comfort zone. I don't know about you, but but to do that, and again, it's something that you do not for yourself, but you do it to try to raise money for those that need it, and it was quite an adventure. There's no doubt about it.
It was, but when I won the year that I danced, I don't know if this was a penalty or what, but you had to come back and dance again the next year.
That's right. Yeah.
And then Carmen wanted to do a dance off.
Right.
Of the 10 years previous winners. So
right.
3 years, that's why my knees are bad.
Right. It's almost fortunate that I was not around to participate in that 10-year reunion. Yeah. And my ability to talk incessantly, it allowed me to MC those events afterwards. I didn't have
to. Right.
One time, and that was it. I told Carmen, no more. I'll never do it. And let me ask you a question. Do you remember any of the steps? No. I don't either. People ask, oh, well, you must be a good dancer. You went through all that training, and I don't remember squat.
I tell people it was one of the most difficult things that I ever did, but probably one of the most fun.
Yes.
When right. You look back on it, and but you're right. When those doors opened up and it was showtime for you to hit the dance floor, and that place is packed. Ooh. And these people paid pretty good money to come and watch you dance to support the children in Lake County.
Right.
You're like, please don't let me mess up. That's a lot of pressure.
I'm with you, man. I swear, of all the things I've done in my life, that is the most scared I was when I walked out on that dance floor that night. I mean, petrified. I've jumped out of airplanes. I've done some crazy things in my life. But that is without a doubt the most fear I felt in my life.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. But like you said, it was fun and it was very rewarding when it was over with, and you'd accomplished something and you had done something, and to step outside of your comfort zone and do something like that is very rewarding.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I couldn't complete this interview without talking about that because we share that in common. It was just, it really was quite an experience. How many weeks did you train?
If I remember, you had 10 lessons that you could take.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were some weeks that you would do 2 of those lessons in 1 week, but then you might go a week. And, but there was a lot of dancing with a broomstick in your own, in your own home.
I was hoping you were going to say that. My wife used to laugh at me because I would be outside by the swimming pool, dancing around the swimming pool, doing the steps in my head with music going, out there just by myself, all dancing and just trying not to make a fool of yourself when you step out on a dance floor. That was the ultimate goal, is just please, gosh, don't let me fall.
That's right.
That was the ultimate goal. Well, good. Well, I'm glad we had an opportunity to talk about that. Now, Peyton, you're in your second term. You're still a young man. Let's see, if I calculate this right, you are 53 years old now. You got a long time to go. How many years do you think you're going to bless Lake County with your service?
Well, I'm 52, Bruce. Don't rush things here.
No. I'm sorry. I just turned 58, so I'm ahead of you. Yeah.
And I did. I just started my second term. The good news is, when you start your second term as sheriff, they allow you to have bullets for your gun, so the county's a lot more safe today. But I don't know. We'll see what the good Lord has planned there, and my family would be a part of that decision. Sure. So. I will tell you that we're very blessed in Lake County. And when I say we, I mean law enforcement. Mm-hmm. To our citizens listening, thank you for supporting the men and women that are protecting us in this county. It's a tough job they have. But I will tell you, this county is growing quickly. We just passed Marion County in population for the first time ever. And it's 1,156 square miles and 1,400 named lakes. And you can't drive in a straight line from point A to point B because of the lakes. But, the support for the police departments and for the sheriff's office here in Lake County is unreal. And we don't take that support for granted. We understand that we have to work hard every day to keep that trust and that respect. We don't ever want to lose that. We can't do this job without our citizen support. And so thank you to all of our citizens that are supporting the men and women out there that are doing a great job.
Excellent point. And and with what's going on in this world today and in this country, I'm just going to say we are blessed to live in Lake County, an area that appreciates what's important in life, and that is a strong law enforcement and a law enforcement that respects its citizens and doesn't mistreat them. And we're very fortunate to live here in Lake County. When all you got to do is look around if you don't believe that.
No, that's right. And I will tell you that we have over 800 employees at the sheriff's office now, and they're very busy. It's refreshing to hear my deputies talking about how when they go into a restaurant, somebody has anonymously bought their meal for them. It's little things like that keep them from getting caught up in the news, if you will, of the so-called defund the police or abolish the police. They realize that that's not the sentiment, at least here in Lake County. And I don't believe it is in the nation, but we hear that. When these deputies hear that citizen say thank you for what you do, and the police officers hear that perks them up a little bit. And, this is where they live. This is where their kids go to school.
Right.
Their parents shop here. They have a vested interest to make sure the quality of life remains great in this county, and they just do a fantastic job of that.
Yes, I can't disagree with you. Now, a minute ago, we talked a little bit about your real pride and joy, which is your wife and your children. Without too much disclosure here, you shared with us that your wife was a college athlete, which is pretty impressive in and of itself. Graduated from George Washington University, another accomplishment that you and she could be very proud of. Talk a little bit about your relationship and the children that you have and how you go about raising those youngins.
Sure. My wife is my rock. She really is. We met in high school, and I better get this right since I'm on a podcast, but we've been together 35 years now. And she, just is a wonderful woman. And, a lot of night shifts and me missing the kids' soccer games and football games and baseball games in this law enforcement profession, she was understanding about that. So she always, while working a full-time job, she's been with Cornerstone Hospice for quite some time now. And our daughter, what a joy for me. And she graduated from University of Central Florida. She followed in her mom's footsteps as a swimmer as well. And my son is a junior at University of South Florida in the ROTC program down there. So we're very blessed parents.
Outstanding. Well, you clearly did a good job of bringing them up and holding them accountable and giving them a sense of responsibility and a duty to their community. So that's something that should be a matter of great pride for you and your wife. Law enforcement right now is under attack, Peyton. We talked about it briefly, and you alluded to it a little bit. We had a verdict in Detroit, in Minnesota, just right before we started doing this podcast today. A law enforcement officer was convicted of essentially murder and all three counts. And you've got congressmen that are appearing in cities and encouraging citizens to loot and to protest and to create violence. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be at this point to be a law enforcement officer.
Well, Bruce, I'll tell you that nobody likes a bad cop like a good cop. I mean, a good cop hates bad cops. Sure. When somebody, doesn't necessarily mean here in Florida, but anywhere, when they do something that violates the public trust, it tarnishes this badge for all of us. And, so we believe in policing our own. And I will tell you that, The reality of it is that the law enforcement profession is more professional today than it has ever been. There's always been bad law enforcement officers in the history of policing, unfortunately. This is planet Earth. We hire human beings for this profession, and sometimes human beings do dumb stuff. But in our profession, the percentage of law enforcement officers that get in trouble for doing something illegal or unethical is far less than any other profession in the world. There's numbers to support that. But what you see now with social media and cell phones, and when you have a law enforcement officer that's arrested in Texas or California or New York or New Jersey, 20 years ago you didn't hear about those arrests. Well, today you do, and it's front page, 2-inch, bold print headline news, and it should be, because if a cop violates the public trust, that's a bad thing, and we want that person held accountable. But we are more professional in policing today than we have ever been because of stronger statutory mandates, accrediting bodies that come in to make sure you have sound policies and procedures. The advanced and specialized training now. We have tuition reimbursement at our sheriff's office for our young employees as they're coming up to go get their college education. So the false narrative that somehow police in this great nation have gone rogue is crazy. It's ludicrous. And I believe that the vast majority of Americans understand that. They just don't get their voice heard.
That's an outstanding point. And the one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch of unfortunately, you're right. Social media and the media as a whole has taken up this goal, it seems, of changing the way that police and policing occurs in this country. And it's one of those situations where they're acting like it's broken when in reality I don't think it is. I think, as you just pointed out, it's better than it ever has been in this country, and yet they're using these examples in an attempt to completely and totally overturn a system that I think is extremely effective.
Yeah, the most important thing that we do at the sheriff's office is the hiring of an employee. That's the most important thing. That's where we spend the majority of our energy and our time through thorough background investigations, polygraph exams. You get one shot at getting the best applicant for that position, and you want to make sure you're hiring a person of integrity, a person that's going to do the right thing when nobody's around, as cliche to hear, but that is true. But I don't know that it's a fail-proof system. On occasion, you're going to have that, as you said, bad apple. But to paint with the broad brush that's this profession is absurd. I 28 years I've been with the sheriff's office. I've put doctors in jail. I've put pastors in jail. I've put attorneys in jail. That's what we do in this profession, is enforce the law, and we do that with honor and with integrity. When we raise our hand and we swear to support, protect, and defend the Constitution, we take that very serious. But like I said, on occasion you have that one knucklehead,
right? And
it hurts us all when that happens. Right. But we deal with it. We deal with it swiftly, and we move on.
Well, you use the term knucklehead. Every profession has knuckleheads, with the exception possibly of the barber profession, which doesn't seem to have any knuckleheads at all. But unfortunately, your knuckleheads get more press and more acknowledgement than the lawyer that may get caught stealing from his client, or the doctor who may be misdiagnosing, or those don't get the amount of recognition that your mistakes do. And, as you pointed it out perfectly, everyone makes mistakes. Every profession has fools or knuckleheads, but yours just seem to be under a microscope, especially right now, and it makes it very difficult to do what you do. And I think that I hope that most of the citizens, I feel certain, in Lake County are very grateful for their sheriff's department and the way that you do your job here in Lake County.
That's right, and we are. We're very grateful for the support, and so thanks again for that.
Yeah. Peyton, I'm going to leave you tonight with this one question I'm going to ask you, and let's say that for 10 minutes you are the king of the world, and anything that you could make happen, you can make happen to make this world a better place. 10 minutes, you got one thing that you can do. What is that one thing, in your opinion, that would make this a much better place for all of us to live?
Wow. You know, that's deep, Bruce, because I will tell you that when you look at Scripture, it talks about when my people turn from their wicked ways and, ask for healing of this land. That's where I'm at. I just can be perfectly honest with you. I believe that we're in a spiritual battle. I don't believe this is a battle in the flesh. When you're looking at things like bondage and child porn, defunding the police, we've taken prayer out of school. We've taken the Pledge of Allegiance out of school. That's what we need to do. We need to take a knee, and
right.
we need to ask for forgiveness and ask the Lord to heal this land. And I don't know that there's anything else that's going to fix the situation that we're in right now.
That's a great answer, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think you're right. I think that our decisions that we have made over these last 30 or 40 years, stemming from our leaders in Congress, in the Senate, in the White House, in the Supreme Court buildings, I think that they have taken this country that was founded on religious and Judeo-Christian principles and completely and totally knocked it off track. And it is that decision and that series of decisions by our leaders that has led us to this point right now, which is a very, very disappointing and frightening time in this country to me. So thank you for that answer. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, sir.
Peyton, this has been an incredible, 30, 45 minutes that we've had an opportunity to spend with you tonight. And I feel certain that we'll have you back if you'll come back and join us. And thanks for letting the voters of Lake County get a little eye on who you are and what you are and why you have become what you've become. Thank you very much, Peyton.
And thanks again for having me. It was an honor.
This is Bruce Duncan. We're signing off for this season of Community IQ. Thank you, Garrett Bunnell.